Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday, and welcome to the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners meeting, January 25th. Invocation, is Pastor Dean Williamson here? There you are. I knew you looked familiar.
Good to see you all. Commissioners, staff, citizens of Brevard County, thank you for giving me the honor of leading you in prayer this morning. We want you to know at First Baptist Church Cocoa, we're praying for you, and we believe in the power of prayer, so let's bow our heads in prayer right now. Dear God, we come to you because we know that our world is broken and that it has problems. But we know that no problem is too big for you. So we come to you for help. God, we pray for the efficiency of our institutions. We pray for the growth of our businesses. We pray for the unity of our churches. We pray for the wisdom of our leaders. We pray for the courage of our first responders. We pray for the maturing of our students. We pray for the safety and the flourishing of every single one of our citizens. And Lord, we have some things we want to pray against. God, we pray against polarization. We pray against unforgiveness. We pray against stubbornness and a refusal to put ourselves in other people's shoes. Instead, God, we want you to give us grace, giving to others what they don't deserve. Unity, focusing more on what brings us together than what divides us. And love, seeking the good of others ahead of ourselves. Lord, only you can give us these things, and we ask for these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, sir.
And with that, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Commissioner Smith?
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I have minutes for approval. Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve?
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett,
Second.
second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Consent agenda, would anybody like anything removed? Commissioner Tobias says F14. Anyone else?
To approve.
Commissioner Smith makes a motion to approve. Oh, I'm sorry. I have some cards on F1. So can I get a motion to approve, or can you amend your motion minus
so amended.
F1 and F14? Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Smith.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Tobias. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, can we at least introduce item F1?
F1 is a request for the Board of County Commissioners to consider granting a waiver of Section 623202H10, which requires a 6-foot wall, masonry or solid wall, when a development of commercial is adjacent to residential zoning classifications.
Okay, and I have some cards. Ken Talbert. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
My name's Ken Talbert. My wife Betty and I have 2 pieces of property adjacent to the waste management property. That's 255 North Burnett and 245 North Burnett. I'd like to take this opportunity. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to voice our feelings on the matter. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Waste Management for the job they do. They do a great job. As far back as I can remember with this property, they've always done an excellent job. I'm very pleased with that. So I want them to know that we have no, complaints about their service. Their service is excellent. But what we'd like to do is say that we're in favor of the wall, of putting the wall, because several times they get the trucks going in the mornings and they're backing up, and our property's right adjacent to it, and the trucks are geared towards, they beep when they back up, and before the sun's up you're hearing them beeping and you're hearing the honking of the horn occasionally, and occasionally somebody's yelling to the other guy, hey, come on, let's go, that sort of thing. But you start hearing that pretty early in the morning before the sun's up. And so we think that a wall would have a benefit to maybe buffer some of that a little bit and help us with that. Occasionally, a little bit of trash blows over on our property. It's not the end of the world, but it is a factor that maybe a wall would assist with that also. The third thing is that it's not just the voice and the noise factor or the trash. It's occasionally, and it's not very often, but I might as well put it out there. Every once in a while, the odor's a little tough on you. They empty all the trucks, and I guess they park them back in the area close to where we're at. And, it's natural that they come from the landfill. There's going to be some odor from time to time, but it's not a major concern of ours. But just so I have this opportunity, I might as well throw it out there with you on that. but our relationship with them have been very positive as far as service goes. But since this opportunity has presented itself, we feel like that we ought to voice our opinion and forward the wall, because we think that may improve the quality of property and have a positive impact on our concerns. At this time, I'm sure you're going to call my wife next, so I'll let her take it from there. Thank you very much. We appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Betty?
Good morning. I'm Betty Talbert, and I'm actually from Cocoa. I'm a native, was born at Woodstock, so my family has actually owned this land for over 60 years. As Kenny was saying, we've had a good relationship with Waste Management. They've been good neighbors, do a good job. However, over the years, we've had the noise of trucks backing up, horns as early as 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, probably earlier. We believe a wall would help buffering the sound as well as any loose trash which could possibly come our way. Because of the increase in population, they're building a lot of apartments on Plucky Bomb. I'm sure you're all aware of that. And we don't know what the future may hold as far as the increase in employees and trucks, which could adversely affect us. We would also be concerned about the negative impact more trucks, more shifts might have on the value of our property. And we believe a wall would help in respect to that. If Waste Management should ever sell their company, we don't know that the next owners would be as conscientious or as respectful. So we're asking for the wall for now, but also as protection in the future in regard to our property value. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have another card, David Basford.
I'm the representative for the applicant, David Basford, 1250 West O'Galley Boulevard. So a couple of different things. As they've stated, the site has been there for a while. And with this proposal, just shy of 20 years ago, they came in and developed the site. And as I understand it, a wall was not part of the code requirement then. What we're trying to do now is memorialize and actually install some of the things that were permitted back then in 2003, 2002. So they had a formal employee parking lot that was proposed over on the west parcel that's now been lot combined. And that was never constructed as either concrete or asphalt for the employee parking, nor was the additional area for the garbage trucks. So part of the reason for the request of this waiver is right now there is a chain link fence and an existing 20-foot vegetative buffer along the west and the south of the west parcel, or what used to be the west parcel. And in talking with staff, one of the things that we wanted to do was, for aesthetics, is maintain that vegetative buffer. We wind up losing a lot of very large trees if we take out the chain link fence and install the wall. With that having been said, one of the proposals is that we enhance the existing vegetation, so it should help with some of the things that they described. But we're not actually changing the existing use or doing anything different than what's there now. Just instead of it being stabilized parking, we're doing asphalt parking. With that, I'll take any questions. Or
Questions? Commissioner Bridget?
No, I don't, sorry, I forgot how to work the mic. I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I had been trying to ask, see if we had anybody that was having any heartburn with this. Typically, I like going with the natural buffers because it's better on the environment, and a lot of trees are there. But the concern with me now, because somebody has a concern, is that what we're using the property for. Commissioner, I'm just going to ask if we could table this for one meeting, because I had been asking to see if I had this. I need to go just do a little more work on it, not necessarily denying it or for it, but I want to go meet with staff and see if there's something I need to talk you into different.
okay.
So.
The one thing that I will say just in response is if it's a matter of potential particulates and or trash, if there's not slats in the existing chain link fence, we can certainly add those.
Okay.
Something to that effect. But It's not a matter of cost, it's just a matter of why tear out nice trees if, just to put in a wall.
That usually
And-
gives me the same
And I'm certainly
struggle.
sensitive to what they said. I hate noise altogether, so.
Okay, so if we could table this, can we table it to the zoning meeting that's closer?
That's
Yes?
the motion.
Okay.
All right. Did you have any comments, Commissioner Luber?
With it being tabled, no.
Okay. All right, I have a motion to table. And a second?
Second. Oh, he's second.
Yeah, Commissioner Luber, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And it's tabled to the zoning meeting, correct? Okay.
Thank you.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Commissioner Tobias, F14.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm going to approach F14 instead of singularly because I really don't have an issue with any of the applicants that are up. It's more of the process. As you guys recall, on August 6, 2019, action was taken by unanimous vote. The Board of County Commissioners imposed term limits of 8 consecutive years or 10 years in a 16-year period for all advisory board appointees. There are a couple here that cause some concerns for me in terms of policy. There's one, and a note is made that, quote, this committee did not meet for 3 consecutive years during the appointee's prior term, thus an 8-year term limit was not constructively not exceeded. I would look at that differently. If a board isn't meeting for 3 years, I'm thinking one of two things. Either we need to do away with the board altogether or find appointees that want to meet more often so they can provide counsel to this board. I just don't think inactivity is an excuse to extend term limits. Another appointee is up here who has been serving consistently since 2009. And I know there's an exception here. A, it requires supermajority, but B, it requires some sort of special need. And, you know, I don't know that any of us have advertised these and not gotten responses back accordingly. It's certainly not reflected in any of the requests up here. But with the construction licensing board, I do have some concerns because these folks make decisions that have impact on business owners, and I don't think that we should have folks up here for extended period of times that may render a decision that would carry on longer than those 8 years. So I will ask something of the board. I respect the decision that the board made. I have not put forward anyone past that 8 years or certain 10 of 16, even though it's been requested. I consistently let them know that the board voted in such a way to impose term limits. It becomes, and I'll do it, but it becomes very difficult when I say no and these individuals run to another commissioner and explain why they're so useful, and another commissioner then appoints these folks. This does require a supermajority vote to be valid per Section 2, Section 213, subsection 3. But just for future reference, I will not be voting for any term-limited appointee per the board. So this would have to then be run the table with everyone else. Again, this is not a reflection on any of these appointees individually. It's a reflection on the board. We put forth a policy. It's very difficult to follow that policy and then have everyone else abjectly disregard it. So again, I'm going to say this because I have respect for these appointees and greatly appreciate what they've added to this, but this would be the District 2 appointee and the District 4 appointee who would not meet the requirements and would require a super majority. So Those are the two that would be last name Fuscus, last name Durham, that I cannot, with good conscience, as action of the board, vote for it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I recognize Commissioner Tobias' concerns, but I have a couple of different thoughts. This particular board that he's speaking of it's essential that we have institutional knowledge in decision-making. This particular board, the licensing board, does need that. It's construction-oriented. So we don't have an abundance of people beating down our doors, and I'm being facetious, of course, but beating down our doors to volunteer for this board. So it's important that we have people serving that, one, have the background, the institutional background that comes from having served for beyond the 8 years. And we're lucky in these cases where we have people that are so skilled and have such background that are willing to serve the community for no pay. They're volunteers. And I've never, since I've been on this board, I've never been comfortable with term limits for a volunteer position. I'm extremely in favor of term limits for elected officials, but for volunteers, we're lucky to have them. I think we have 64 boards that we have to appoint people to, and it's not easy. You don't always, and I've said this before, you don't always have a plethora of people, an abundance of people that are standing in line saying, me, I want to serve. Most people have a life, and they have routines, and it's hard to get them away from those routines to serve the community. So having said all that, I understand we do have term limits in this particular case, but I also understand that we have waivers available, and that's to the option of the commissioners to exercise the waiver. And so I like the system the way it is. So I won't support this.
Commissioner Lober?
Just a few thoughts, if I may. First, I think there are two separate questions that are contemplated or that have been raised by Commissioner Tobias. First, obviously, deals with just a straight exceeding of term limits, and the other deals with whether or not to count years in which the board just simply hasn't met. And I don't necessarily have an issue if Commissioner Tobias wants to bring forth either a discussion item or maybe even an action item on particular boards if he's looking to dissolve them because they're simply not necessary. But as to the one appointment that I have, who had 3 years of technical service where the board never met, it wasn't, his cause that the board didn't meet. These folks simply show up when they're told to show up. And to have someone on paper serving where there were no votes taken, there was no discussion had, I don't see that, to me, is really going to the core of what I was trying to accomplish when I put in place or when I put up the agenda item in the first place to institute term limits. I'll tell you that I am very skeptical as to waiver requests when it comes to certain advisory boards. Certain advisory boards, I do have people beating my door down to get on, whether it's TDC or EDC or charter review or redistricting. I had no problem filling any of those, but there are others, for instance, the one that I did ask for the waiver on, where the appointee has, well, it's not just the appointee, but the board itself, the committee hasn't met for 3 years, 3 consecutive years during the term. I just don't see that going toward the issue that I was seeking to remedy. And obviously, in hindsight, we would all do things differently. In hindsight, I probably would have built something into that agenda item going back a couple of years to allow for that. But when I see term limit waiver requests as to boards that are hard to fill, I don't necessarily have an issue with that. I trust the individual commissioners in trying to see if they can fill them. My office is advertised for a number of different committees, and we filled some of those committees based upon those advertisements, but there's some where you advertise and you get 0 requests. So there's very little choice other than don't appoint anyone or appoint the person who's still desiring to serve.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Tobias, if you find some more boards like this to dissolve, I'm totally in on it. I think we probably still have way too many boards, so I get completely in agreement with you. It's, funny about the elected officials, I think we kind of serve term limits there. We have some up here, but, voters kind of vote you out. So I think that's kind of a natural thing. So when we appoint them, these are probably more of the ones that would maybe be more concerning. But the thought here also is that it's an advisory committee. But, going through COVID, we're also having a hard time, finding people to serve on board. So I'm going to vote with the commissioner of the district of what they feel they need. But that's all I have to say on that.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just remind the board that institutional knowledge isn't always a good thing. In all honesty, it's not a minimum requirement up here. In fact, a board member I got an email from, if it doesn't border, it certainly exceeds sunshine, the outside of sunshine. The email begins, thank you for your response, Commissioner Tobias. Commissioner Smith and I wanted, and this is an individual who probably has been through sunshine training, hopefully 5 or 6 times, and blatantly disregarding it right here. And I know I shouldn't be saying this, but the reality of the situation is these folks have one cardinal rule, and it's broken here in the first sentence of the email that I received. So I don't always see institutional knowledge as a positive. I think probably fresh blood is a good thing. I appreciate Commissioner Lober advertising, and I don't know that this position was advertised. I'm going to continue to vote no on this one. However, more important than exceeding the term limits is what Commissioner Pritchett mentioned, doing away with some of these boards. I tried this a year ago or 2 years ago, and I don't think I got a second on this one. So Ms. Wall has done an amazing job. I don't know if it's public yet. I think I said there were 50 or 60 boards. I was only off by about 30. Apparently there's like 90 of these boards out there. I challenge you guys to go through it and see who's on it and whether or not they've ever advised us for anything. But I will ask again for a list of all of the boards that are statutorily required. Obviously, I don't want to do away with any boards that the state is requiring us to have, but to continue to have these boards that have no purpose, don't meet for years, and are not needed is not only a waste of the members' time, but it's a waste of the staff time, and potentially putting us into some jeopardy here with these type of emails that fall outside of sunshine. So I will be bringing that back here, a list for the board, and I'm going to task Ms. Wall to hopefully send that out to all of us. I think she's probably got that delineated, because that was one of the things that I asked previously, is which ones do we have to have and which ones do we just have for, I don't know, for no reason whatsoever. So please look forward that coming up. I'll continue with my no vote here, but I certainly understand everyone's disregard for term limits.
All right, I have no more lights. I think the waiver's in place for a reason, and I think it should be more applied to those boards that we've not been able to fill. I think that of course is the exception. I mean, you obviously want to make sure, planning and zoning, that sort of thing, that you have a member that comes. And I know that was the discussion that we had on this board regarding those waiver requests. So, I mean, I believe in term limits as well. I think we need to give other people a chance. I mean, there are some important boards as far as budget goes and that sort of thing that I know plenty of people would be interested in if we just worked really hard. I know my office works really hard to try to advertise in order to get people to that volunteer for the boards. But I think that it's your job as a commissioner, since we all supported this, to argue the point. If you believe a member needs to stay on, yeah, it sounds tedious, yes, it takes time, and yes, it's meeting time. I think that, if you can justify why you're reappointing somebody for the 100th time, then I'll support it. But as for now, I won't support any extension without a good argument. I think D2 probably has the strongest argument at this point. If the board hasn't met in 3 years, again, you can look at whether or not the board needs to remain in place, but the guy hasn't been even providing input. So it's not like he's going in biased or that we're tired of hearing from him. He hasn't served in a meeting in 3 years. So I would support the D2 appointment, but that's the only one. My appointment on this agenda item is a new appointment because we replaced somebody who didn't come to meetings. So that was sort of, something our office is trying to do to make sure that the people that we do have on these boards are showing up. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like the idea of having the ability to remove one of these folks because sometimes they do get old and crusty. And sometimes they're just there because they don't have anything else to do in their life. And, well, that's fine. It gives them something to do. But we need people that show up that are responsible and serve a useful purpose. And that's why I like the waiver. And when you have a person that does meet the criteria of showing up, being the chair, being respected by his or her peers to be elected the chair, that says a lot for me, that the people that work with this individual, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out, they support what he or she is doing. So that's the case with my appointee. He has been on the board since '09. He knows the ins and the outs of most of this stuff probably in his sleep. And his fellow board members have elected him to be the chair again. So that's why I choose to reappoint him. And if the next commissioner decides that he's too long in the tooth, well, then he can remove him. And there are people that I have removed because I think that they've been there too long, but that's not the case in this particular instance. So that's why I chose for the waiver and chose to reappoint him. Because I'll be the first to admit, some people they're there too long. But I don't think that's the case in this particular instance.
Did you advertise or try to get somebody else to fill that slot?
Mm-mm.
See, that's the only thing that I don't like about it. You present a good argument as far as why you want to keep him, but I think we need to give other people a chance to serve on these
And
boards.
just for argument's sake, if I'm happy with the job that he has done, or her, and I think that they add a lot to the quality of the board, why would I want to?
And while
re-advertise?
you make a good argument, that sort of is against our policy. So we probably shouldn't have or you should have spoke out more strongly against the policy if you wanted to have that
Well, and
freedom to do that.
I don't disagree with the policy. I think it's an opportunity for us to clear out dead wood. I don't particularly think this guy's dead wood.
Commissioner Lober?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, apparently it's not going to matter how I vote on this one since it needs a supermajority. I do feel kind of conflicted with respect to Commissioner Smith's appointment that we're talking about. I do like deferring to the commissioner in whose district the selection or the vote or the issue at hand most directly impacts. But then again, I also support the prospect of term limits. Seeing as how my vote doesn't matter, this is one of those coin toss votes, I'll go ahead and support Commissioner Smith's decision, but it's not going to change anything with respect to the outcome.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Maybe if we just allow a little time on this and come back and allow some time to advertise, see if other people jump in on it. I know even Mr. Fuskus that we're talking about, he brings a lot of wisdom to a board. So don't want to disrespect him either. So I just don't know if we have other people or not. And again, we don't even know if that board's necessary. But I think wisdom here would say just give them a little while to advertise and see if somebody signs up to take those places. Because I'm having a hard time finding anybody to fill boards. But if you had someone like Mr. Fuskus who's willing, I mean, he definitely brings a lot to the table. And running through these things before they get to us, they weed them out, we can read them, and it really gives us a lot of help with research. So that's just my thought.
I think that's wise counsel.
Commissioner Lober?
Madam Chair, it sounds like we have enough votes for everything except the one individual from Commissioner Smith. So if you want, I can make a motion to approve all but that. And then if the board, I'm just trying to read the tea leaves here, Commissioner Smith. Like I said, I'm happy to support it today, but I don't think you have the votes.
Well, and I don't object to advertising it. I mean, if we get some superstar that applies, or even a good quality first stringer, I'd consider appointing that person. But that raises the other question, what if we don't? What if we just cut this guy off and we don't have anybody to?
But then you would probably have a good argument as to why you should keep.
That's why I said, that's why it's wise counsel that Commissioner
And
Pritchett
Mr. Fuskus
suggested
is
that.
probably one of the finest human beings in this county. I mean, he really is. He's smart, he's committed, he's a kind, compassionate, awesome individual with a ton to contribute. So I know it would be hard to
And I
to
can
not
say that-
support him
I can say the
because,
same thing about Mr. Durham. Mr. Fuskus is an appointee of mine on a board or two, and, I would put Mr. Durham in that same class. Mr. Durham isn't as active with the rest of the commission like Mr. Fuskus is, so maybe you guys don't even know him. But I will be happy to advertise and see what comes up.
So let's do this. I'll go ahead and make a motion, and I'm not going to move to reject Commissioner Smith's appointment, but I'm just going to move to.
maybe he can pull those appointments.
Yeah, if you pull it, that's even cleaner,
Okay.
Commissioner Smith.
I'll do that.
Which appointments? So we're clear.
That would be R.J. Durham.
And Mr. Fuskus, you're going to pull those appointments just so that way they don't have to be rejected?
You tell me, because I was thinking we might even have enough votes for Mr. Fuskus.
Well, let's
Just based on the arguments.
pull Mr. Fuskus. In fairness, let's pull him as well, and we'll.
And that way he can at least stay in place until this board's
Yeah.
decided, once you've advertised.
Let's go ahead and do that. I'll go ahead and pull Mr. Fuskus. Commissioner Smith pulled Mr. Durham, and I'll go ahead and move to approve it, just taking no actions to the two that we pulled.
Is that clear for the clerk? I have a motion by Commissioner Lober,
Second.
second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. That was a much bigger discussion than I anticipated.
It's always a long one.
All right, so we're moving on to public comments, and I have one card. Charles Trapp.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
So I'm Charles Trapp. I live in Port St. John, Florida. And what I wanted to talk to today was about predatory towing. I was a recent victim. And I understand that you're currently considering substantial rate hikes for the towing services in Brevard County. I don't begrudge anybody the opportunity to earn a fair wage. But I do feel that some protection should be put in place for people that are victims of predatory towing. I'm sorry. So that's my concern today. If you allow increase without monitoring the effects that the predatory towing people have on the common person, it can offer the opportunity for them to increase that pain. And of course it's a financial thing. When I find that with predatory towing, when somebody tows your vehicle and they don't have the right to do so, and you try to address it with the local law enforcement, they consider it a civil matter to go to court to get your money back, which I'm planning on doing. However, when a crime is committed and your vehicle's been taken, you've lost control of something that you own, your private property's been removed from you, and you don't have access to it anymore, it's a pretty eye-opening thing. In other areas of Florida, Miami-Dade and Hillsborough County, there are large class action lawsuits. Morgan & Morgan, of course, is doing the Hillsborough County because they're trying to get help for the people that have been victims of such practices. In this case, I feel that when a lawyer has to get involved, that maybe there's something not happening with the people that set the rules. Maybe something can be done to, when the rate increases are requested, maybe somebody can look at the opposite side. What's going to be the effect of the people that don't follow the rules? Because there are people that don't follow the rules, unfortunately. As a Brevard County citizen, I just want to put it out there that there is an opposite side to that coin. Again, I'm in the automotive business. I deal with a lot of tow truck drivers. Most of them, until recently, I thought they were all above board. They all earn a decent, they're all decent human beings and, doing a good job. Unfortunately, I have found recently that they're not all like that. And unfortunately, as I started to do some research, it's not just me. It's a more common problem than I would have imagined. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Again, I know that means time's up.
Do you have a question for him?
No, I just have a statement to make. I acknowledge what your concern is, and I agree with you, because I can only imagine how helpless the feeling is when you park legally, I'm assuming in your
Yes.
particular instance, and you come out, you don't know if your car has been towed or stolen.
Stolen, and that was my-
And when you find out it's been towed, gosh, now the onus is on you to get your car back, to hire a lawyer, pay the fine, pay the towing fee.
Yes.
I agree, there has to be some kind of protections in our considerations when we put this together.
Thank you.
Because we have to protect you, the people.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Lober?
Yeah, and I'm just hoping you can help me out with this, and I'm not being facetious or sarcastic, so please take it as a genuine question, because it is one. I completely agree that what you're talking about would be incredibly frustrating. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I'm trying to figure out, because the item that was brought forth deals essentially just with rates.
Sure.
And whether we lowered rates, whether we kept rates the same, or whether we raised rates, I don't know that the rates themselves are going to necessarily impact whether or not someone's going to tow a car illegally.
No, I understand that. Again, I have no objection to people earning a good wage. I mean, I understand the rates have been this way for quite a while, and therefore, if they see the need for a raise in their rates, I don't have a problem with that. But I think that when considering these things, there are some bad apples out there.
Of course.
Maybe there should be some way to weed them out. If there's a process put in place where if you cross certain lines, that maybe you get taken off of towing. I know the counties, the cities, they have like lists. You call them up when there's maybe there should be some things that say, hey, if you break these boundaries, then you no longer qualify for these special treatments or special services.
If the board wants, I'm happy to reach out either to the sheriff or to FHP. FHP has a station not too far from my house, to see what the criteria are for getting on the list, because I think it may be a more direct route to resolve it through the folks who are actually determining who to call for the particular tows. If y'all want me to do that, I'm happy to do it.
Sure.
Okay, I'll follow up with either BCSO and or with FHP to see, and then I'll bring back, probably for the next meeting if I can get a hold of them beforehand, in board reports, something
Okay.
with respect to that.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Will you go back and check in with my legislative aide back there and give her your phone number so I can get in contact with you later?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
Great, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item H1.
Good morning, Commissioners. Item H1 is a public hearing for the creation of proposed Chapter 46, Article 11, landscape irrigation relating to watering schedules consistent with St. John's Model Ordinance. We're just mirroring their language. This allows us to remain eligible for cost share grants, district-wide cost share grants, up to 25% for shovel-ready projects. And we're in cycle right now, an application cycle.
Okay, I have a couple cards on this. If we can hear those first.
Sure.
Mr. Rick Heffenfinger, and after Rick, Sandra Sullivan.
Rick Heffelfinger, 2000 Juniper, Cocoa, Florida. I was before you back last year when I saw this, because I really don't like when we mandate or we create ordinances to try to force people to do things. But, hey, if we got a water problem, we should do that. But I find that it's all about the money, because the St. John's Water Management District refuses to give any Brevard grant proposal any consideration unless we do this. That's coercion. And I sent you guys all a letter, and I am asking you to stand against that. If we need to do water restrictions, let's talk about that. But let's not fold to being Essentially, I'm being extorted because I give St. John's Water Management, all of us here in Brevard do, because they're a taxing authority, right? So they take my money, they're supposed to do what's right about water, and then they say, hey, listen, unless you pass this law and restrict yourselves, we're not giving you your money back. So they won't even, as far as I know, they won't even consider a grant, right? That's wrong. I don't even know if it's, I asked the question, is it legal? Because they're strong-arming us, and they've got my money, and they won't give it back. Maybe I got a good idea about, I want to dig a pond on my property. Now, I don't think they can hold me. Maybe, hey, tell you what, you guys write a really good proposal, ask for a grant, send it up there, and just let them say, no way. And then we can talk to the governor and say, hey, what is this? We're being strong-armed by another branch of the government. It's wrong. So I want you guys to stand and say, nope, we're not doing it. Put your grant forward anyway, let them say no, and we'll go to court. Got a couple of lawyers up here, right? I don't know if coercion's legal or not. I asked that question. Is it? If it's, it may not be illegal, but it's wrong. So I would just hope that you guys would take that into consideration and make a stand. This is creeping authoritarianism. I tried to throw some words in this letter I wrote. Because, hey, they're saying, all right, in the past, we'll give you 5 extra points on your grant proposal. That used to be their policy. So, hey, you do this for us, we're going to give you these 5 bonus points, right? That's, that's coercion too. That's a little sleazy. But that's fine. But you'll still consider my grant, right? Now they said, well, hey, that didn't work. We couldn't get these guys to fold. We need some laws in here. We need to, we need to make sure that they don't water their grass more than twice during a certain period. And then, hey, we'll take them down to once. So if they won't do it, guess what? Now we're not even going to consider your grant. We're just going to, we want your money back, you got to conform. Now, what happens after you do this? You accept this one, right? So, okay, well, we'll put it on the board, we'll put it on the record, we won't have any penalty, everybody's happy, right? Can't get me because I turn my water on, but you can't do anything. What about next year? And they say, hey, listen, got that ordinance, you want grants money next year? Guess what? You got to put a penalty on it. That's where they're going. Thank you.
Sandra Sullivan?
Good morning, Sandra Sullivan. Hope you're enjoying the cool weather. I attended the Satellite Beach meeting when they talked about this, and they had a different conclusion on the enforcement part, that they were required to enforce. So I don't know why their attorney or their municipality, when they implemented this, had a different version of opinion on that. I also want to talk about, so related to this, Florida DEP issued information last year that their projections are we're going to run out of drinking water to meet future demand, and that we need to think about renewing sewage water to be clean to become drinking water. Groundwater conservation is important. I appreciate that. I also appreciate one of the largest users of groundwater is HOA common areas. So when you look at it and you think about strategic decisions, addressing those largest users is a way to get your most bang for buck, so to speak. So I don't see anything in this ordinance, for example, about running sprinklers in the rain. I mean, obviously, we're driving down the road, we see pouring rain, and here's all these sprinklers in HOA common areas spraying. So here's just a couple considerations. Adding a rain sensor clause for all new development in your P&Z, requiring new development agreements to reference this ordinance along with the rain sensor requirement, strengthen aquifer recharge areas by amending the comp plan for a stronger low-impact development ordinance for the upcoming comprehensive plan changes. Pinellas County for Tampa Bay and other areas have much stronger LID components than Brevard. We should be leading the way with the Indian River Lagoon. Thank you.
Commissioner Lober?
I want to kind of address some of the items brought up by both of the speakers in reverse chronological here. First is to the folks that are watering their lawns during times when it's raining. I see it too. I think it's stupid. I think it's wasteful. But I don't believe the purpose of this item being brought up today is to address things that are stupid or wasteful. It's to continue to to have in place a system that allows for us to get state grant funding. I'm not saying that the ideas you brought up aren't necessarily interesting ideas to debate at a future meeting on a different agenda item. I'd be happy to talk about them and look at any proposal that's brought up, either direction. As far as Satellite Beach having the conclusion that they have to enforce it, I couldn't speculate as to why they have a different conclusion. All I can tell you is that staff on our side and legal on our side has told us that there is no obligation to do anything by way of enforcement with this. And I wouldn't be supportive of doing this if we had to do enforcement for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's a regulation that, frankly, if we enforce, really actually does begin to have teeth. I know that's fairly obvious to say, but if we're putting in place some form of a mandate that has no repercussions, it's not really a mandate except on paper. All it does is save taxpayer dollars by allowing us to continue to draw from a pool of money that we otherwise wouldn't be entitled to draw from or able to draw from. The other thing is it costs money to enforce things. And if the whole goal of doing this is to save money or to allow money to come from the state that otherwise would have to come from folks that live here, it would be foolish for us to do that and spend money enforcing it, which would offset the gain that we get from the state. As far as the suggestion from the first speaker that we take a stand and we bring it up to the governor after we get the short end of the stick from the state, you can talk to the governor now. Anyone can. Anyone sitting up here, anyone sitting in the gallery, anyone that wants to call the governor's office, you're welcome to email them, call them. I promise you they have email, they have phone. If you want to send them a letter by USPS, I promise they can receive it. It is all about the money. I don't think there's a question. I think we were pretty blunt about it at the last meeting when this came up, that the entire purpose of this is to continue to get state grants. I can tell you that there are battles that are uphill battles that I've been happy to fight, and I think the commission has taken some stands that would be considered uphill battles, and that's fine. But when you're talking about something that really has no non-frivolous cause of action for us to even file a lawsuit about, I don't know what we're expected to do. No one has suggested even a potentially meritorious cause of action that we would have to be able to challenge something like this. And it's great to stand on your principles, but when you know to a complete certainty there's nothing that's going to be accomplished by filing a lawsuit other than getting the attorneys in trouble for filing something that they know is frivolous and has absolutely no chance of any degree of success, that's not the way to go. So I'm supportive of this. Again, it is all about the money, and I'd rather have the money come from the state than from folks that live in Brevard. So I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Commissioner Lober for approval.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pritchett. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. I have item I1. I have quite a few cards here. As the commission's aware. You guys want to take 5 minutes? Yeah. Take a 5-minute break because we have like 11 cards and probably a long discussion ahead of us. Commissioner Tobias, let you introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is an evolving scenario. The town of Malabar had a special meeting last night. County attorney as well as myself attended. Neither of us spoke, but certainly sat in the audience. I'd like to deal with a couple things that were brought up, recap where we were last time, and then after listening to, with your approval, after listening to the speakers, then go ahead and decide whether or not to move forward with motions. Before that, I want to dispel some of the rumors that I think are floating out there through partially our fault, but certainly want to take it off the table. There's the thought, certainly by many residents in Malabar, that we're doing this merely for profit. Apparently, we are selling the tonnage of the trees. Well, when we take trees down, we have one of three options. Number one, we can leave the trees there. Unfortunately, that creates fire issues. Number two, we can take it to a landfill. That takes up space and is expensive. Or number three, we can sell a portion of the tree to offset the cost of removing them. We don't make very much money at all for doing that. So this certainly is not a decision that is coming down to any profit margin. Number two, there was talk at the end, not black vans, but white vans going out there and surveying. I thought that was kind of interesting. And there's genuine concern, I believe, and I guess I understand a little bit of it, that we're just going to go down there and mow down the trees without a permit. And while, in all honesty, that crossed my mind for a half a second, and though I don't have control of it, I would never absolutely or even get close to voting to circumvent a permit that was necessary. That causes all sorts of problems with us as a board up here that asks businesses to go through permits if we ourselves had to have a permit and then disregarded it. So if one is necessary, I certainly would never vote to disregard a permit of any legal body. So just to take those two off the table. Thankfully, the 100,000 tree rumor I think has been dealt with in such a way. It's still many trees, but it's a small percentage of that 100,000 that was discussed. One other thing that came up last night that is very important to mention is that the nesting season starts pretty soon, March 1st, and then goes through June 30th, so nothing can be done during that period. So there is some need to move forward. So that's what came forward at last night's meeting. I greatly appreciate the tenor of not only the folks that were speaking on the other side, but also the members of the Malabar Town Council. It certainly did not raise to the level that staff had to deal with previously. So things, I think, were improving, at least with attitudes there. But to recap where we were at our last meeting, the board, through motion, directed Mr. Knight to forego continuing public meetings. Again, these individuals and city council members are more than willing to contact us individually or show up at these meetings, as apparently they have. We have rescinded transferring the Malabar scrub lease to the town of Malabar. We agreed to install a 6-foot chain link fence, and then we instructed the county attorney to reach out to state for directions and possible other actions to take place. So the reason it's coming back, I made an error and I accidentally said February 24th instead of January 24th, though I did say immediately after the special meeting, I misspoke. And clearly my error was understood by the town. In fact, in the meeting notes for last night, they have a timeline. In the timeline, they got the intent correct where they put down January 25th. So there will be a motion dealing with that, a slight change instead of a, and I'll get to this in a minute, but instead of a chain link fence, it would just be a barricade, but it would be January 25th. I don't want to think anyone that I'm springing this on anyone. It was my error, and the town was aware of it as by their own accord. They have down in the minutes that were provided to the meeting last night. So what I would like to do with your approval, Madam Chair, is listen to the speakers and potentially make motions based on what is presented by the public as well as potential members of the town council.
All right, Commissioner Lober, did you want to speak now or after?
Yes, if I may, and this is one of those items, the last time it came up, I don't think I said a word other than aye when the vote was called. There are four things that I want to just very, very briefly mention. One, as to what Commissioner Tobias just mentioned, the conspiracy theory, because that's really what it is, that we're doing this to make money on selling the trees. I don't know what it is with trees and conspiracy theories, but they're all over the place. I see Commissioner Smith certainly can relate to that. We had gotten, and I know because I was copied on the email that was sent to you, Commissioner Smith, basically a nasty letter from an attorney, a nastygram as I call them, on the tree issue on Rockledge Drive, where they were suggesting that we were trying to butcher the trees to reduce the value of the property so that when we put septic in there, if that comes to pass, that the eminent domain acquisition costs would be lowered. I mean, just crazy stuff. So trees and conspiracy theories seem to go hand to hand. I don't know why, but they do. I don't know, even if we do recover some of the cost of dropping the trees and going through this process by virtue of selling them, I don't know that we would actually be in the net positive. I'm not sure if staff has a strong opinion one way or the other, but I would think, yeah, we would recover some of the cost of felling the trees, but I don't know that we would even cover the cost of dropping them and selling what's left after they drop. Does anyone know one way or the other?
We don't know. We haven't run some estimates on there, but we think if there is a profit, it would be very low.
Okay, so we may be in the negative nonetheless. It doesn't sound like there's a huge profit incentive there. I'll tell you, the emails that I've gotten, frankly, have pushed me more in Commissioner Tobias' direction than I was at the last meeting, just based on the fact there is a ton of misinformation out there. One of the emails that I think everyone got, because there seemed just to be a high desire to send everyone that had a pulse an email, whether they were related to the issue or not. One of them that I got recently said that we were looking at removing 140,000 trees. That's about 10 times as much as what staff told me. I think the number was between 10 and 20,000 that I had heard from staff, so not 140,000, although 140 is pretty good. Why not go up to 1.4 million? That's more impressive yet. If you're going to make it up, make it big. Two other things. The Cooper's Hawks that we heard from folks who, frankly, are more educated in the subject than any of us up here. When they came back at this, when they came to the last meeting to discuss the issues and why this is necessary, they talked about the Cooper's Hawks. I was thinking about it afterward, and it's occurred to me that I don't think we have any sort of an agreement with the actual birds of prey whereby they're going to stop eating the scrub jays while we debate this and discuss this and try to work things out with Malabar. So I would just caution folks that whatever we do, there is a timeline. The land exists because there is a threat to the population there. And if we're sitting twiddling our thumbs, waiting for potentially months and months for another governmental entity to do the right thing or to stop doing the wrong thing, as it were, the Cooper's Hawks are just going to continue to munch and nom on the scrub jays while we're doing that. So I think that's not the way to do it. Whatever we do, I think there should be a decision in the near future here. And the last thing I'll mention is, when you look at this, I'm looking at this not just from an environmental perspective, but first and foremost from what benefits my constituents in District 2, so the folks that are roughly in the eastern central portion of the county. EEL's property exists and the funding exists not to provide additional money for parks and rec facilities. It's not a goal of EEL's to essentially increase recreation at the cost of environmentally sensitive actions or environmentally beneficial actions. There's a reason that the property is named what it's named. There's a reason that it's designed and that it was envisioned when the funding was produced. to keep these scrub jays in an area where they're able to do what scrub jays do, survive, hopefully reproduce, and continue to exist for a period of years. So it's not lost on me that the folks that are talking about other usages of the land are talking about usages that weren't the primary use envisioned by the funding that set this aside in the first place. So I'll leave it at that and see where things go.
All right, I have Matt Stinnett, and then after that, Murray Hahn. If you just state your name and where you're from.
Good morning. My name is Matt Stinnett. I'm the town manager for the town of Malabar. I'm here today after direction from council last night to ask you to direct county staff to work with me to get this permit issued for the tree thinning in Malabar scrub. At this time, the county does not have a valid permit submitted to the town. So I believe that's partially because the town's permitting requirements, which we changed last year, were not intended to deal with conservation type work. So they're a bit excessive for the type of work that Mr. Knight has proposed. Last night, planning and zoning was directed also to address that for our future projects, but council wanted to focus on getting this project through because of the tight timeline you guys are on, and gave me the levity to come and negotiate and talk with your staff on actually modifying those permit requirements for this project specifically. At the previous town council meeting, Mr. Knight had informed us that he was going to be holding some public workshops on the project to try and find some kind of balance in the project, and then of course those were canceled. Council was looking for those results in order to make their decisions on modifying the permit for last night. Since those meetings didn't happen, this was kind of the only action they could take. With that said, you know, I believe Mr. Knight can attest that collaboration and good faith is kind of my mode of operation. So we've had a positive working relationship in the past prior to this. I personally have been out of the state for military duty for the past year and was not a part of the process of putting this together and talking with him back and forth. So I think we have an opportunity here if we can just hit the reset button that you and your staff could work together and get a permit in place so that you could begin your work. So thank you for your time.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Mr. Stinnett. And I'm certainly not attempting to be adversarial here. I certainly don't want to treat you in such a way that our staff was treated when we went over there again, not by you personally, but other folks that you may work for or that you may work with. I heard certain things by the board, your board, and my question is this, since you probably have had more discussions with them. Is the primary concern of the town, the elected officials, is it the trees or is it the scrub jays?
I would say that the primary concern of my council was more the lack of public input. Obviously, the sign went up. We had kind of a permit that was submitted last year, and I don't think it was fully understood what level of project this was going to be. And so we received a rush of concerned citizens wanting to know what was going on. And so our council raised the flag and said, you know, what's going on? And there's been a lot of misinformation going around, which has led to heated conversations on both sides. And so
I appreciate that. So,
yeah.
So just to be clear, you don't believe the December 6th meeting that we sent someone, the December 9th meeting, the webinar, the December 17th meeting, the December 20th meeting, and the January 3rd meeting, all open to the public, were enough?
I would say that
and I understand
we have had a lot of public engagement since.
But not enough.
Then.
Is that what your argument is?
I'm not saying that now. I think it has, and that's why council has given me the direction to essentially color outside the lines for this.
Okay. My follow-up on that one. And again, I appreciate the position that I really do appreciate the position that you're in. And I think you're doing a very good job weighing the two. But there was talk on your, there was talk on your council about a compromise. I believe the talk was that they're okay with cutting down. I didn't come up with this number, but what a couple of members of the council said, and actually a couple of members of the public as well, 99% of the trees. Do you recall?
Yes.
Okay. And I understand you're probably going to be under direction of these folks. My question is the 1% of the trees that they want to keep up. My primary concern is that of the scrub jay population.
Right.
Will the 1% that they're interested, I have no idea what that 1% is. Will the 1%, will there be any scientific basis for the decisions of those 1% when it comes into consideration of the scrub jay population? Or will that 1% be for recreational purposes? And if you don't know the answer, that's fine. I'm just...
I would say the 99% number is a speculation. So we are, the truth behind it is we are very close, and I believe my Trails and Greenways committee members are here tonight or this morning, excuse me, talk a little bit about it, but that's, I think, the reality that we've come to after the public engagement that has happened over the last few meetings is that we're really talking about doing the same game plan. We just want to make sure that we're not just, cutting trees without purpose. So there's a few trees in there. Maybe Mr. Knight knows exactly which trees he's cutting down, but I don't believe that you had specifically identified every single tree you're going to be cutting down. So that's kind of where we just wanted involvement, and I think we've had that, and I think we're very, very close to the same page. But we need to have a little bit of conversation on the technical aspects of it. So
Okay, I may disagree I think the level of involvement has been above and beyond, but I greatly appreciate you coming up here. I think you did a wonderful job given the situation that you were that you're in. So thank you so much for coming here. I don't want anyone to think that we treated you in a bad fashion. I'm very cognizant of the feelings of staff members that work within parameters. So, and thank you for your service as well.
no problem.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Thank you for being brave enough to show up today. Question for you, and well, first of all, let me just establish, we do know it's federal property, and we've been given the responsibility of caring for this property under the stipulation of bills. And I know you know that our goal is to try to do what we've been told to do by the voters as far as protecting the scrub jays, because we purchased it for the scrub jays. So I know that's not an argument. My question is that we did have a permit to do this, and you guys had given us that permit before. And I know you understand that we had to go after funding to try to finish out what we needed to do on the property. So before, there was an agreement to do this project without a lot of pushback. So it's not like a new thing. I think it's something that's been out there for a long time. So I do have a little concern now that it almost looks like the city area is trying to make a little more money off of us on a new permit because there's more of a cost to take down trees. But let me just ask you a question. Did the city council deny the extension of the permit? Is that how that happened, or was that administratively done?
That was administratively done. The permit was expired for over 3 months. It's
Right,
no
but
longer
typically
valid.
with counties and cities, that can happen. So my question that I want to ask and leave with you, are you allowed to administratively then extend it after, you have time to digest this a little bit? Are you able to go back and say, you know what, we need to extend this permit?
I would say no, I do not have that administrative authority. Once it is expired, it's invalid, and I cannot extend it.
Okay, so that kind of left us in a little bit of a pickle here with something that we had already established to do. So you got to understand our point of this. there is a lot of what looks like things that aren't done properly from my eyesight on this right now as far as what we're trying to do. And then the emails we are getting, they're primarily concerned with it being like a park and recreation area is what my interpretation is. Again, I don't live up there, but this is what I'm interpreting from what I see, and I don't think this property was ever purchased to be park and recreation. We have plenty of those. So anyways, I'm going to be interested in where Commissioner Tobias leads us on this, but I think that this really needs to get fixed soon, because I do have concern over those scrub jays, because it's been made a vital piece of property as far as their ability to survive, so.
Commissioner Lober?
A couple of questions for you, sir.
Yep.
And I'll echo what you've already heard about appreciating your being here. I certainly, if I had to pick someone else's shoes to fill today, they would not be yours at this particular moment. But that said, you have a job to do. We have jobs to do as well. I'm having a hard time understanding a few things. You had mentioned that you were looking for, or at least you had alluded to looking for, tree level specificity from our staff as to which trees they want to remove. I've got a couple concerns with that. Number one, we had a permit already, and I understand that the process changed down there, but it wasn't needed a year ago, and magically it is so important. It's a mission critical, full hold, full stop, condition precedent to moving forward now. It just doesn't strike me the right way. I'm just curious on a couple fronts. One, we'd heard, unlike the 140,000 that was floating around that I think someone may have had a dream about and came up with the number, we heard between 10 and 20,000 trees are involved. What kind of specificity are you looking for? Is it okay if staff circles an area that has a clump of trees, or would you like them to tag each of the 10 to 20,000 trees in some way? Because I don't know that that's reasonable.
Right, and I agree with you on that, and that's kind of where council did not have the consideration for eels when they were developing the current permitting requirements. So we were looking for a tree survey that would actually identify each of the trees that were cut down specifically. Now, council has given me the direction to not require that. All right, okay. I need to put together some type of requirement for the permitting, and I know my crew with Trails and Greenways has worked very hard on identifying specific trees or areas that they'd like to save, and I think they've communicated that to Mike in the past or the SMC meeting, but that was not an option for me until last night. So now I've been given that authority to go and actually negotiate those terms.
And let me ask you another question. Commissioner Pritchett brought up an interesting item, and if you misspoke, it's not the end of the world. I get this isn't the most enjoyable spot to be in, and I'm sure every single one of us have said things in error at some point in time. I had gathered from the line of questions that she had for you that the initial permit that we had, that was where it had an extension request that was denied, the denial was administrative. And in a little bit of follow-up back and forth with her, I had taken from it that once the permits expire, that it's your position that you cannot administratively extend them, so you can only administratively deny. Is that correct, or is that something where I have a disconnect here?
Correct. That was my take on it.
Okay. All right. That clarifies it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'll save my questions to the end. Okay, come on up. And after Murray Hahn, Andrew Thompson.
I'll just try to add a little bit of detail to the Malabar Greenways and Trails Committee. We learned about this when the signs went up, and I understand there was an SMC meeting in February 2021, but I wasn't there, so I didn't understand that this was underway, or we would have worked on this a little more over time. It's part of it's gotten compressed in time. We, the Greenways and Trails Committee, had sort of an immediate meeting, and I got the assignment to bring back to them what we're calling a compromise, but I think that was a bad choice of words, because what we did was, after talking with Mike and others, I think we understood the rules that they were trying to apply to get better scrub, and the rules were 1 to 2 trees per acre maximum, over 15 feet tall, get rid of screening trees, a screen of trees closer than 1,000 feet to prime habitat. And that 1,000-foot number seems a little fungible depending on the size of the property. And so we went and started looking at that because you might have heard 99% of the trees or 98% of the trees. Well, Greenways and Trails has never tried to we never wanted to try to tell the EELS program how to manage their property. We've tried to influence a little bit the trees that are around the trail. And some of those compromises have potentially led to some of the issues Mike can talk about with the screening trees. And so we looked at what they were trying to do, and we looked at how the edges of a property often have tall trees on the private property anyway. And so if you have a clump of trees right up against 60-foot trees on private property, why not leave those? We tried to look at rational ways that we could still leave some woods that didn't affect their environmental goals, and we put quantities to that. We said this area A has about 40 trees in it. Mike had already identified in his staff 3 or 4 to save there, but it's got like 40 trees. And then we looked at the entire property, and we're still at 1.4 trees per acre for the whole property. If you strategically locate some up against Country Cove, a few in a wetland, so that they're not looking at a burn area. They have a small 30-foot wide screen of trees. We looked at those kind of numbers and tried to strategically balance, tried to meet their goals the best we could while still meeting while still leaving as much as we could for the trail users. And as far as like when we had a long north-south that was running right through the middle of prime habitat, we said, we understand, you're going to have to take those trees down. That does create the screen you're concerned with. We're not fussing with that. That was the goal.
Thank you. Andrew Thompson. And after Andrew, Mary Jane Russell.
Good morning. I'd like to thank the board for letting me speak this morning on this subject. I'm the chair of the Trails and Greenways Committee for Town of Malabar. We have learned a lot in the last 2.5 months. I know more about scrub jays now than I sure did then. I know that you all have enjoyed some of this. It's a little bit entertaining at times, and there's certainly been miscommunications on both sides of this altogether. I think you might be more aware at this point that the Brevard citizens in 2004 last voted for the $60 million referendum, which is again coming up in 2024. When they voted for passive recreation among 2 other things, and that was the protection of habitat for natural habitats, obviously the purchase of lands, but then also education on environment. We're not against any of that. We've always worked well with EELS, we feel. We've tried to work with them because they at times need to work with us. We're the trails people. We have a major trail system there. It is some ecotourism. It's certainly why people buy, purchase, work, live in our part of the county. I know you've received a lot of communications on that. And what Mr. Stinnett basically explained is council has listened to the Trails and Greenways Committee. We're an advisory committee. I also serve in the VP-TAC for the county. I'm into trails. I like trails. I think it makes people chill out. I think it's critical that you recognize the Greenway and the fact that we do have an urban forest. It's an urban forest. It's where people go to play outside, take their kids to see real woods. But we're not trying to protect all the woods. We fully acknowledge the science behind the scrub jay protection. We understand why certain areas are designated for that. But what I don't think the council recognizes is the voters have a different perception of what EELS is about. And I think that another thing that needs to be acknowledged is basically over the years, what's happened is the forest was there. I mean, we're talking 93, 94 is when this particular property, east and west Malabar Scrub, were purchased. And what's happened is trails were built. There were trails before it was purchased, but people have built up. That part of the county has a tremendous number of people visiting this area. Those are the folks that are worried about the trails going away or the trees going away. So what we have come up with, again, studying the planning, we understand the distance from trees, as Mr. Hand has mentioned. We've got the 1,000 foot is optimal. Some of this area doesn't allow 1,000-foot whether we have anything done differently or not. But the thing is, we understand that there needs to be minimal trees for the predator birds to hang out and take out the scrub jays. We get that. We're not against that. We have a plan that we feel balances the intent of the scientists from the SMC. We've been to virtually all the meetings, seminars. We've been very much in attendance once we knew about this shortly before Thanksgiving. We feel that we have a plan of balance that we wish you would consider, and Mr. Stinnet's authority to talk to your folks is there. Thank you.
Mary Jane Russell, and after Mary Jane, Susan Hahn.
Hi, I live in Northeast Palm Bay, and I walk the trails every day. And I know there's a lot of misinformation, but I'm going to give you some information that isn't misinformation. It's the truth. About 8 years ago, I was walking on the Boulevard right off of Malabar, there where the firehouse is, and I was walking there. This was 8 years ago. It was in February, that's about all I remember, because the person I was with mentioned the scrub jays in February, and the trees were full of scrub jays. You could put your hand out, and you had a nut in it. They would jump in your hand and take the nut and fly away. And that wasn't unusual, because he did it several times, and I did it. The trees were full of scrub jays. That was 8 years ago. I'm not making it up. What happened? I don't know. I know that they burnt that area twice since then. I know that I walk there every day and there's no scrub jays that I see. I know that they burnt down in Jordan, and I walk down there, there's no scrub jays. What happened to them? Did they go somewhere else? I know if I was a bird and someone burnt my area down, I wouldn't come back. I don't know. But I do know I love walking the trails. And if you haven't walked the trails, you really should. It's a place you can go, and you don't have to worry about your budget. You don't have to worry about how your hair looks. It's so peaceful. They're so wonderful. I see less and less birds, not scrub jays, other birds. I see less and less tortoises. I don't know why, but I know it's not me walking on the path. I heard I was in a meeting last night, and I heard the word compromise. Compromise what? I mean, if you're going to cut down some trees, if it's the pine trees, I'm not sure, but if you're going to cut down some trees and the scrub jays need a certain tree like the oaks, for the acorns, then cut one tree down and plant 3 of the ones the scrub jays need. Why cut them all down and why burn everything up? I don't get it. I just don't get it. It's such a beautiful area. If you haven't been there, which you probably have, but if you haven't, please go there, especially since before they burn everything down. Thanks.
All right. After Sue Hahn, we'll have Mark Britt.
Good morning, everybody. Sue Han. I'm a longtime resident of Malabar and appreciate the opportunity to address you this morning. I think you've heard from our town manager, and we had a very robust discussion at the council meeting last night. And what I would like to ask is for the gift of time. We have some folks that have been very actively engaged in trying to work with the science-based parameters and believe that we have some good ideas. Well, not we, the folks who have been working on the Greenways and Trails Committee. We have some good ideas, and they have presented them to the Selection and Management Committee. We'd like to have some time to work with the staff and work with the SMC to see if we can get to a place that demonstrates outstanding intergovernmental cooperation. This is important to the town of Malabar, and it's important to the county, it's important to the scrub jays, it's important to the trail users. And I have always believed that there are ways that we can get to a place that everyone meets their goals. And so I would really appreciate the gift of some time that we could work together with the county staff and reach a a plan that works for everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mark Britt, and after Mark, we'll have Annalee Harvey.
Good morning, Mark Britt. I reside in Country Cove, and I'm coming to you as a resident. I'm not affiliated with any groups, but I'd like to approach and provide some photos, if I may.
Okay, if you just hand them down, we'll pass them down.
Well, there's 5 different. You probably received my email. I wanted to attend the last meeting, but my wife and I both tested positive that morning, so we weren't going to go anywhere and spread our germs. Basically, I moved to Country Cove. My property backs up the sanctuary, and this whole thing has me petrified. This whole thing has me petrified. We use, I have 10 grandkids. I use the sanctuary just about every day, jogging. I take the grandkids, we go through, we do some biking in there. I've been over to the Jordan Sanctuary, and that's the first photo on there. You've probably seen it. I've heard different comments on it, but as you could see, that was taken after the last when I did the restoration down there. I know they have a job to do. We all appreciate the EELS program. We're looking to, compromise is a good word. If it were up to me, I believe, I've heard there's 5 families of scrub jays in there. Our goal is to enhance their being in there. But the one thing I do want to point out, and I feel like Patrick Mahomes, 13 seconds, but the one thing I do want to point out in the Jordan Sanctuary, I went last week, and I went through the whole sanctuary, and it still smells like a burn site. And if you look at the periods of time when they did the last burns in there, it was quite a while ago. There was one done in December, and if this is what I'm facing in my backyard, help me out here, because I know they use chemicals to start the fires. I know there are plants in there that burn black, and it just basically means we will not be able to sit in our backyard if they do that burn close to my property. So if, please help me out here. We bought this house, beautiful area. The one thing I do want to point out too, real quick, it keeps being mentioned that, 2 seconds?
I'm sorry, we have 12 cards, so we have to afford everybody the same time.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, thanks.
Anelia
Any
Harvey?
questions on the photos? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And after, Annalee. Ryan Chorka?
Hi, my name is Annalee Harvey. I'm a longtime resident of Malabar, and I'm working on a part of the Greenways and Trails Committee as well. As you know, the Greenways and Trails Committee is a committee of volunteers. We spend our time without any pay, any compensation, because we love the town, we love the trails, and that's what's in the Malabar scrub right now, as well as in the Jordan scrub. It's trails. It's not park and rec. It's passive recreation. I used to take my kids down the trails when they were little, and they enjoyed it very, very much. They learned a lot through it. Now I'm an equestrian. I take my horse down there, and I'm very close to the Jordan scrub. I used to ride down there all the time, and I was dumbfounded in the spring when all of a sudden I go there and there's no more trees, or barely any trees. I could see from the west end of the property all the way down to Harris, which is the east end. It looked like a parking lot with trees on it, and it was burned. And the lakes, they were usually a great attraction to go there, to ride around the lakes, because you had palm trees there, you had shade there and everything. They're bare. They look like just holes in the ground with water in it right now. I understand that the EELS program, that the scrub jays need the protection, and I'm all for that and stuff like that. My issue is this radical cutting down of everything. Now, in the Malabar scrub, you have a lot of areas that are, I would think, usable for the scrub jay to eradicate it and stuff, take the trees down there for the scrub jays. But a lot of the trees that we are talking, that Greenways and Trails are talking about, that we would like to have saved, are on the outside, on the skirts of the scrub, which is bordered to private property anyway, where huge trees are that I will not be able to touch that. So it wouldn't make that big of a difference to just extend the tree line a little bit further into the Jordan scrub. The other thing, as far as miscommunication and rumors and stuff like that, I think that is a big lack, that this all stems from a big lack of communication. I know you had a lot of meetings on the subjects and stuff like that, but I've been on Greenways for 4 years. I never heard anything about what they were planning in Jordan Scrub. And a lot of people in Malabar, like I said, it's volunteer, we have jobs, we have other things. I would have expected that we get a notification, an email, or our representative would show up and tell us about it, and then give us a real picture of the extent of it. I heard the report on the news. They were talking about 10 to 15 trees that were supposed to be removed and 8 to 10 bikers that would have an issue with it. This is what the public hears. That's the only information that a normal person that's not on county, that is not part of this, gets to hear, and I think that's a big misrepresentation. I would hope you would compromise. Thank you.
Ryan? Is it Chorka?
It's Chonka.
Chonka, okay. And after Ryan, Nancy Peltonen?
Thank you. Good morning. So I am here today basically as a user of these trails on behalf of the many bikers and hikers. I grew up in Brevard County, but I currently reside in Melbourne Beach. New to the area and absolutely love the sanctuaries, and the trails there are spectacular. I would like to say that we do have a fairly sizable number of people that have expressed interest and concern in this. If I could hand these out.
Sure.
This is just the printout of the petition we have on change.org. And as of, thank you.
Look at the title.
As of 7:30 this morning, we had approximately 381
You
signatures.
do know your title says "Stop the Destruction of Malabar Scrub Sanctuary," so it sounds like you're destroying the habitat, just so the public's aware, because the public doesn't see this.
Gotcha.
So that's a little misleading, wouldn't you say?
I do have to point out that this was not my petition. I did not start it or word it that way, so I do apologize if that is misleading.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't start your clock, but I interrupted you anyway, which I always criticize people for doing, but I just was a little taken back by that, because it's not really a petition. It's not really an honest title, if you ask me, but. So you have now another 3 minutes. So.
Okay, thank you.
Apologize.
Yeah, so I come to you basically as a user of that sanctuary and the trails. It really is a stunning place, and I think it is one of the only deep woods recreation areas that we have access to, or easy access to, in the community itself. So really, I would just ask that the town of Malabar be brought into the fold and is able to work with you on a proper course of action to make sure that the scrub jay population is accounted for, but also the people that recreate there and enjoy that environment are also accounted for as well. Environmental impact survey, perhaps, if that is feasible, that may be an option as well, to determine if the actions that are proposed would actually have the impact that is intended.
So you don't have the language for the petition, do you?
I'm sorry?
You don't have the language of the petition that was signed, do you?
No. In
Just
full,
the title?
I can bring it up.
Well, I
on,
ask only
laptop.
because, again, I would sign this, because I wouldn't want the destruction of the scrub sanctuary if I
Right.
just read the title. I'm just saying.
Sure.
Commissioner Lober?
Madam Chair, another question. Change.org, obviously people can sign that from anywhere in the world. Do we know how many of the 381 live in Brevard or live in Malabar or even in the state of Florida?
I do not have those metrics. I would have to default to, I think his name is John Winchell. He is the gentleman who actually put the petition together. I'm speaking basically on his behalf today. He couldn't be here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sorry to hit you with so many questions, but you brought it to us, so that's why I was asking the questions.
No problem.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. I didn't see Nancy. I have a card for Nancy Peltonen. I think she probably had to go because she's a busy lady. Miss Sullivan? Oh, Sandra Sullivan's passing. Ollie Johnson? I hope I got your last name correct.
Yeah, morning. Ole Johnson, Melbourne, Florida. And I come to you today, and I've heard all of these other voices, as an advocate for the scrub jays. And I was a naturalist, park ranger at Turkey Creek Sanctuary for a long, long time. And I'm also on the Scientific Management Committee for eels. But today I'm here to speak as a citizen of Brevard. The Malabar scrub, the Cameron scrub, and east and west, it's not a large area. It's not thousands of acres. If it was thousands of acres, perhaps this would be a legitimate thing to save some of the trees. But it's not. It's just a small little postage stamp of scrub in the midst of all of this development. People like to build their houses in scrub because it's high and dry. It doesn't flood. You don't want to build your house in a swamp. So scrub is a valuable, disappearing habitat here in Florida. So the science says the trees have to go, the land has to be managed. The trails, there's lots of trails. So removing some of the trees and burning is not going to really affect it. And I guess the bottom line is that we have to save the scrub jays because they are going to go extinct. Science says that they're going to go extinct on the beach side. They're going to go extinct in the north part of Brevard, and the south part of Brevard is the only place left that has enough scrub habitat to support the population. And I think that the last thing I want to say is that ceding management to the town of Malabar would create a bad precedent. They are not capable of managing the property for the scrub jays, and it would just create a bad precedent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right. Eva? And if you could pronounce that last name, because I don't want to butcher it.
Not easy. Nagamahali.
Nagamahali?
Yeah, you said it nicely. Thank you. Thank you. I'm a resident here in Brevard County for about 19 years now, and I came from Miami, and I'm glad I did. However, I don't live near Malabar. I've never been to this beautiful area, but I have a main concern, and mostly because I'm hearing commentary from you, who I put as the legal people in charge of what is important to us. What's important to us is what that says, EEL, and I guess it stands for environmentally endangered land. So the land is also endangered. We're talking about 477 acres. I don't care if it's 10,000, 20, or 100,000 trees you want to take down. I'm concerned about taking down trees as well. That's part of the land. Not only are the birds, the owls, the cougars, all of them, they're all our environment, and people are concerned about it. So if we come up late and we weren't following it all along, we expected you to follow it for us. So my heart goes out to every tree, every animal, and every person that is concerned like I am. There is some form of compromise and something must be done. EEL is there to manage, not just for scrub jays. Whoever decided that this beautiful oaken area or beautiful paths is now going to be leveled, why didn't you do something else? Why did you sell a large part of property to a developer who gets to mitigate? He gets to buy somewhere else, and then he gets to build his apartments and sticks up a little palm tree. I do believe in development. I'm not saying against it, but you're responsible to take care of what we already have in nature, and do not decimate our country just because you have a permit to do it. The permit might be legal, but is it the right thing to do? And this is where I have my major concern. We do things that are legal, quote, we follow the science. Well, guess what? There are a lot of scientists out there with a lot of ideas. So here's my idea. Figure out a way to compromise this. Save certain trees on the border areas so an owl can sit. You know, pine trees are great trees. I don't want just certain trees saved. Save what you can and do what you need to do to help everybody. I'm really emotional about it because I see all these trees being taken down and all these apartment buildings that are going up and no trees on them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it looks like that is it for cards. Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've heard a couple things. First one's time. I think time is a red herring here, and let me explain why. At last night's board meeting, there was talk about how long the process would take. The board made the motion to send it back to P&Z, and the response they got from staff was somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 6 months. So best case scenario, 3 months pushes us into the nesting season. There really is not that time if this is the intent to help out the scrub jays. And second of all, we hear about compromise. Here's what I did hear. Heard words shade. I heard bike trails, horse trails. That was new to me. View, backyard. These are all NIMBY arguments. What I didn't hear was any science. I didn't hear any environmental engineer or anyone point out that having a certain tree of a certain species would not have an adverse impact on the scrub jays. It's unfortunate, but the motions that I have are as follows, and I don't mind discussing them, but I'd like to make them individually. So the first is reflect the deadline for the Malabar Town Council to comply with the county's request for permitting as of January, I almost screwed it up again, January 25th, 2022 instead of February 25th, 2022. That is, approve the immediate installation of temporary barricades at the close of business on January 25th, blocking access to Malabar Scrub Sanctuary, and bill the town of Malabar for any costs associated with the maintenance or replacement of temporary barricades. That was the intent last time. I just screwed up the month, so that was my fault. And again, the town was aware of that. Secondarily,
Is this the same motion?
no.
Are they separate?
This will be a second motion.
Are you
But I
going to
just
wait
wanted-
till we're all done talking and then bring them back? Or are you going to go through, stop with each one? Because the only.
How would you rather?
Well, I have a question on the first one. I think
Sure.
that the question was, we don't have a submitted permit application right now because it was denied. So we need to resubmit if we're required, and that's an Abby question, if we're required to even have a permit based on the fact that this is not commercial property or residential property.
Right, and so we're getting into some issues that we have looked into as far as pursuing a legal action, which the board directed me to do at the last meeting. And One of the questions is whether we actually have to apply for a permit in this case. So we did apply for the extension under the old permit, under the old code. As far as the new code at this time, I have advised staff to refrain from applying for a new permit because that would possibly jeopardize some of our legal action in the future. So as far as the motion's concerned, I mean, at this point in time, we did apply for the extension. We did not receive that under the old permit, which was the permit we could have done the work under. And at this point, I would be concerned moving forward in applying for a new permit unless we had something fully worked out with the town. If we're able to work out with the town as far as the new parameters under the new code about the survey and the costs, maybe we could pursue that action, but at this point, without any distinct details in writing from the town as far as any waivers that they may have authorized the manager to do, I would be very concerned to apply for a new permit, because that might be one of our
But
challenges.
since we don't have an existing permit, it's hard to say approve this if there's nothing to approve.
What about asking them to reconsider?
The old permit?
Yeah.
Reconsider the old permit?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, they certainly had the opportunity to do that last night, and there was no discussion of that, and certainly I don't expect staff to make that decision in a million years. But the board, listening to the tenor of the board, though it wasn't anywhere near as negative as it had been in the past, there were a couple comments by a different town councilman that talked about making us pay money.
Painful,
So
expensive.
yeah, it didn't get that far. It didn't get painful, but it got into us paying millions of dollars. So that being said, even if there was a waiver, it would put us past, by their account, not mine, put us past the deadline. And the reason I didn't bring it up was, again, for Abby, I don't know that we need to necessarily recognize their authority to provide us with said permit. There's going to be a motion that follows that motion that Abby may want to talk about that would give us additional avenues, but these can be done concurrently. But that's why I was going to do it all together, but I'm more than willing to handle it separately. It's discretion of the chair.
Okay, well, what does the board want? What's the board's desire?
Let's break it up if that's okay.
Okay.
I'd prefer to do it that way.
Okay, Commissioner Pritchett, did you want to talk now?
Yeah, just a couple things. This land was purchased for scrub jays. This is why we use the voter referendum dollars to purchase this. And so that's the primary purpose of it. And, you know, when I vote for the eels and stuff, I didn't vote thinking having nice recreation areas. And they're a nice side thing, but the main thing is for the habitats of endangered species. So this was primarily for this endangered species. You know, whether not that's something we'll do in the future with things, I don't know, but that's what this land was voted for. So I've heard a lot of people talk about, you know, we're not doing the voter purpose, but we absolutely are. I mean, that's how I interpret it. That's how I interpret it when I voted for it, that it's for the protecting the species that we got it for. I wouldn't be against having the meetings come back for discussions, but only if you reinstate our permit and you give us that same permit. I don't think it's fair that we have to go permit again now and spend $40 of taxpayer funds to do a project that needs to be done for state property that we have spent $1.6 million with trying to maintain out of taxpayer dollars. I don't like the feel of this. It's coming from the city. It gives me great concern that the permit was denied. It could have been, you know, agreed upon, then come in and done discussions. I think the county's very good to cities. We're always open for discussions and listening. Nobody has an agenda here outside of doing what's good for this public purpose. So I have concerns with that. I also have concerns that this has been through the ILS board, which these guys put all this time into, by NASA science coming in saying this is what needs to be done with this property to do the scrub jays. Commissioner Tobias, I'm going to support your motion with what you have set out to do, but my hope would be that they would reinstate that permit. We would have reinstated your permit. We would have allowed that to happen for you guys to have more time to get your funds together. This is not a new subject. It's been going on for over a year. So it's not like, gee, we didn't know this was going on. We did, and it could have been discussions going on for a long period of time. So Commissioner Tobias, I'm supporting you on that, and I'm kind of thrown back too, because we're not doing a construction project. You know, we're not building a mall or something.
This is property we're trying to maintain its primary purpose for. Nobody is doing this to be mean. Nobody's trying to take out trees that are really necessary to have in there. The purpose of this property is to keep that scrub jay population, and these birds are almost extinct. So Commissioner Tobias, you do have my support on that motion, and I'm hoping you have some other witty ideas of what to do to help facilitate this project.
Commissioner Lober?
I'm just going to throw out there, I'm going to support almost anything that Commissioner Tobias suggests with respect to this, as long as it's consistent with where he's been, both during this meeting and at the last meeting where this was discussed. Couple thoughts. One of the speakers that came up mentioned that 8 years ago, and I'm paraphrasing here, that scrub jays were essentially everywhere. You could put your hand out with a nut or an acorn, and you have 2 or 3 come down and snatch it, and now they're nowhere. That's exactly why we don't have the time to continue to have, I don't know how many meetings Commissioner Tobias read off the dates for, but there were a number to have additional meetings along those lines. The bottom line is we're talking about, by and large, pine trees. Pine trees, and I'm a lifelong native Central Floridian. I have never heard anyone in my life suggest that pine trees are at risk of going extinct anytime in the near, intermediate, or even far future. Scrub jays, as we've heard, are not pine trees. It's not that we have hundreds of thousands or millions of them, an uncountable number of them. There are a finite number. We're not looking to develop the property. We're simply looking at maintaining it for the purpose that it was acquired. So I'm going to support almost anything.
This is a question for Mike. This does not, moving forward with the project as it stands, as the plan is now, does not impact the trail usage of the recreation user, correct?
That's correct.
It impacts the shade, the scenery, the picture, the view. It doesn't impact the use of the trail, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I think I asked you this last meeting, but I want that very clear for the public. So as far as voters' perception of what this is about and how voters voted for passive recreation, we're not taking recreation away from them. I guess, this board ultimately is deciding what's more important. And again, and I think Commissioner Pritchett brought it up even last meeting, and again this meeting, this property was purchased for this purpose. So whether you agree that it's a good idea or not, it really isn't the point. This is what the Eels Committee, this is what the voters' intent was. So in a perfect world, we would find compromise, but my concern is, and what I've heard, is the compromise is a big ask. And if we compromise too much, we could potentially impact the project. And I don't want to only do this halfway. I want to make sure that what we do has an impact and has a lasting impact for years to come. So, compromise. My compromise is not to make sure that people have a nice view when they go riding their bike or walking. As lovely as that is, there's a lot of places on the trailway where you get that visual that you need, but it doesn't impact access. And I've always said that about Eels property. My big things where I wanted the public to have access, and I wanted us to be able to maintain what we purchased. So I think this accomplishes that, and on top of it, accomplishes the intent to preserve the scrub jay population. So I'm in support of Commissioner Tobias' move forward.
So do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Madam Chair, I've got
Yes.
a follow-up. This was done in concert with the county attorney's office. There were some unique and very interesting ideas that you may or may not want to ask at this point, but here is the proposed motion according. Motion to authorize the county manager or designee to execute any and all necessary documents regarding the effective management of the Malabar Scrub Sanctuary, including making applications to appropriate authorities pertaining to the classification of the property.
Second.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What was the purpose?
I would, Madam Chair, I'd probably, I don't want to go too in-depth in it. I think Abby may be better apt to answer that question.
Okay.
Yes, so the county is in the position that we could pursue a designation or a classification of the property, which is one thing we would like to submit an application at this time, and we would like to get the county manager to do that. It's one option for the property, perhaps.
I think, we spoke about this. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Tobias.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
One more action, Madam Chair, and this would be to direct the County Attorney's Office to bring back to the Board a resolution initiating the normal process outlined in Chapter 164 of Florida statute.
Second.
Madam Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Tobias, second by Commissioner Lober.
Well, one point for discussion. Since Commissioner Lober has a law degree, there's a "or" in here, and I would go with either one of these two options. Both of these came from the county attorney as suggestions, so they have been vetted.
Second stands.
Okay, well, no, here's an option, if you'd rather do this one, with findings that an immediate danger to the health, safety, or welfare of the public exists requiring immediate action to be taken, and/or that the county's legal rights will be compromised if immediate legal action is not taken.
We may need a supermajority for that, do we not?
It would be for me to draft a resolution, which I'd be bringing back to
okay,
you. So
okay.
yes, at that time, we would need a supermajority for that
Okay.
second option.
What's your preference?
I'm not an attorney, so I would, as I probably will do momentarily.
I would go route number 2. What do you think, Abby?
Well, so under Chapter 164, we are required to do the dispute resolution process. There is the option, that second option, to expedite it and actually bypass that process. My recommendation would be to bring back a resolution. If that is the option of the board today, I would bring back a resolution either way, but one, either to go through the normal process, which could take 6 to 9 months. It's that process where we would actually meet with the town council and have different meetings to try to resolve the issue, or we would expedite it by making that finding at the next, when I bring back that resolution, making those findings, and then we could bypass that process and move forward with any appropriate legal action.
I go that way. Commissioner Tobias, it's up to you, though.
And I didn't realize it was 6 to 9 months. That puts us past that nesting season. So I think the second one, because of the timeliness nature of this, that we probably should go in that direction. So that's with the findings that an immediate danger to the health, safety, or welfare of the public exists requiring immediate action to be taken, and/or that the county's legal rights will be compromised if immediate legal action is not taken. That would be the motion, Madam Chair.
And the second stands.
Motion by Commissioner Tobias, second by Commissioner Lober, and I think the latter part of that explanation is, I don't think it impacts the health and safety of the residents, but I think obviously the importance of moving forward due to legal issues. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
And just one final note, Madam Chair.
Sure.
That if this permit is extended, all this goes away. And I really appreciate the work that staff has done on behalf of Malabar. And I wish he had the ability to extend it. Whether he does or does not want, he can keep that private. But should he meet with the council and they decide to go in a different direction, call us up. And we have meetings all the time, whether it's P&Z or whether it's general, we'd be more than willing to stop any of these things once the permit has been extended. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for allowing us to come to your meeting. And I'm sorry I had to get this far. I've never been on the side of environment, and it's a fun place to be.
And I'm glad you went to that meeting, because I think the tone may have been different had you not come. It's a lot harder to be abusive verbally when the person's in the room versus, because a lot of things were said in that prior meeting that probably shouldn't have been said or suggested. Commissioner Lober?
Madam Chair, just one caveat or one addendum to what Commissioner Tobias said. As far as all of this potentially stopping, I would support if Commissioner Tobias wants to go that route, assuming the city, or I should say the municipality, changes their position. That's fine, with the one exception of the designation, having staff apply for the designation to potentially be changed. I would like that to continue irrespective of what the city does or doesn't do. So if he would want to scale back anything else, I'll support that, but not that particular one, just so votes can be counted.
Commissioner Tobias?
Yes, I'd contemplate that, because unfortunately another board could go through the same action with a different council in the future if we needed to mitigate for scrub jays again. So that's, yes, it's a good thought.
Okay. All right. Moving on to item I2. Is Commissioner Tobias?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and be much more brief on this one. During the September 21st meeting, the final budget hearing, Commissioner Lober addressed ineligibility for renter's assistance. And if you look at Section 4 from the minutes, it specifically deals with that. We discussed modifying these terms, why that would be prudent, and that's the reason why it's been placed back on the agenda. It was my objective to make this section clear and concise as possible. In doing so, looked at federal assistance programs for guidance on the issues of eligibility disqualification. These were food stamps and temporary cash assistance. For both food stamps and temporary cash assistance, quote, individuals found to have committed fraud by a court will be disqualified for a length of time addressed by the court. And I have all the documentation on this. However, my intentions were good in trying to rectify this situation. Commissioner Lober, who has a much better legal understanding of the issue, for obvious reasons, found problems with the proposed language. He mentioned found a large loophole that I did not see and certainly did not want to take place. It is clear that the changes given would be good and meet the needs and the intent that I was looking for. So I would wholeheartedly support his proposal when he, with your discretion, when he continues. But my motion would be to strike the language, exclude from rental assistance program the individuals who are actively engaged in litigation against Brevard County, as well as those who have sent a formal demand letter and/or notice of intent to file against the county since the enacting of our local state of emergency, which took place on or about March 15, 2022, and insert the language that Commissioner Lober did on the memo that was sent out to all our offices.
Do you want me to read it in real quick?
I don't have an issue with the memo, but before you do that, I would just maybe add, under investigation, I could say I'm investigating you. Can we just include under investigation by law enforcement agency?
It's in there. I can read you exactly.
Because this is what it says, exclude from the rental assistance program those individuals who are currently under investigation for fraud.
Oh, under the first part?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, we can, under investigation by a law enforcement agency. So it'll read, I'll read it in. So this is how it'll read. Exclude from the rental assistance program those individuals who are currently under investigation by a law enforcement agency for fraud, theft, or any similar crime regarding a government program. Exclude from the rental assistance program those individuals who have been referred by a law enforcement agency for prosecution, subject to any relevant statute of limitation provisions, for fraud, theft, or any similar crime regarding a government program. Exclude from the rental assistance program those individuals who have pled either no contest or guilty to fraud, theft, or any similar crime regarding a government program, or have been found guilty or had adjudication of guilt withheld for fraud, theft, or any similar crime regarding a government program.
Okay. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a little disturbed with this because the way I read it, and I'm not an attorney, that's why I'm bringing this up, it appears to me that if the person, any person, is under investigation, they're automatically assumed guilty, and we're not extending their ability to go forward with the application. Is that correct?
The way I understood it was they're only people under investigation for committing fraud to a government agency. It's
Right.
not.
But they're not declared guilty, so we're telling them that their rights have been absolved because they're under investigation, so they can't apply for this.
Right.
I think that's a stretch, because what happens if the person is later acquitted, and could they come back and sue us or create some kind of legal action because we preemptively prevented them from taking part of this program? That's my concern.
When you turn your light off, when you hit your light twice, it exits you out and then puts you at the bottom of the list again.
So I'm shooting myself in the foot.
You are. John
Yeah.
Tobias? Commissioner Tobias?
Thanks, Madam Chair. And Commissioner Smith, I understand what you're saying. Our first situation was a little arbitrary, and that's the reason I wanted to deal with that one. That was anyone that had legal action against the county. There's unfortunately people that have legitimate legal action through no fault of the county have created a situation. This one, I did it as best to mirror federal law, federal statute. So this one mirrors the abuse of food stamps and the abuse of the temporary cash assistance almost verbatim. So we're treating this rental assistance the same way the federal government treats abuse of food stamps and temporary cash assistance. And again, I'll read it real quickly so you don't think I'm trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes, because we had to look this one up. Individuals who have found to have committed fraud by a court will be disqualified for the length of time, and that's section 3610.0902. Again, if these folks are found not to have committed said crime, they would be eligible for food stamps. They would also be eligible for cash assistance. So while it's not perfect, I think this puts us in a much better circumstance than what we were previously in. If you have another one, I'm not necessarily against it. I was just trying to get us from a bad place into a better place.
Well, I agree. Somebody that's committed fraud and judged guilty of fraud, I think they absolutely should be excluded. I'm just concerned about the part that if they're under investigation, they're automatically excluded. I have a real problem with that.
Commissioner Lober?
Commissioner Smith, I think part of what was contemplated by Commissioner Tobias, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, and certainly part of what I've contemplated in looking at this issue, is you have folks, and I know Ian has given me a couple of examples, perhaps more than a couple in fact, of folks who staff has reason to believe, and not just on a whim or an anonymous tip, have lied on the application for assistance itself. If we don't have something in there to preclude them from getting funding, we will give them funding just trusting that whatever they say is essentially the word of God, and our chance of getting that money back ever is slim to none. It's gone, and when it's gone, no one else is going to be able to make use of it, and we don't have that program for folks who truly do qualify. One individual that I'm aware of claimed more dependents than he was entitled to claim. He left income out, and I think there were concerns over the assets as well. So to say, well, he wasn't convicted yet, law enforcement is in the process of putting together an investigative package without causing them problems or disclosing something that they wouldn't want disclosed. It's going to be going to a prosecutor in short order on the one particular issue that I'm referring to, on this one particular application. To say that, well, he hasn't been convicted yet, we're not taking a constitutional right from anyone. We're simply saying we're not, when we have strong reason to believe that you're in the process of trying to defraud the government right now with this application, going to give you the money and then try to claw it back after you spend it on, gambling or hookers or drugs or whatever.
Okay, well, you bring up a good point. If staff has reason to believe this person isn't eligible, they don't have to wait for an investigation or a conviction. They just turn the person down. Is that not correct?
Commissioner, in many instances, the way the program works, we would not know until after the fact. So in those instances where we have referred people to law enforcement for potential fraud, allegations have come after payments have been made, and then we do refer to law enforcement. We have language in the current policy regarding falsification of documents and the application itself, and misrepresentation would deny them future assistance, but we don't have anything that speaks to fraud, theft, or similar crime as put forward in this proposal.
So could we include some wording that would say that their application would be suspended while they're under investigation?
If that makes you happy, I don't have an issue with that.
Okay, well, that makes more sense to me. And then after they're adjudicated, we know one way or the other.
I mean, this
Yay or
serves
nay.
to do that anyway, but if you want to use that particular language, that's fine.
Okay.
That it's not denied. Commissioner Pritchett?
Good points, Commissioner Smith, and I think you came up with a good solution. I've got the benefit of getting to sit next to the county attorney, and she gave me this piece of paper, so I just asked her, Medicaid won't allow people to get payments if they're under investigation for fraud. So there must be a little bit more to that investigation that's going on in my head as well, but I like your solution. But thank you, Ms. Jordan B., for being prepared.
All right, so
Wait,
then we can add that wording.
How about, I'm just thinking the way to do this, because there's some that doesn't need to change. So for instance, if they've already been found guilty, so instead of saying exclude from rental assistance, we can say suspend the application for rental assistance from those individuals who are currently under investigation by a law enforcement agency for fraud, theft, or any similar crime regarding a government program. Suspend the rental assistance applications from those individuals who have been referred by a law enforcement agency for prosecution subject to any relevant statute of limitations provisions for fraud, theft, or any similar crime regarding a government program. This one, I don't think we should change, though, these two. Exclude from the rental assistance program those individuals who've pled either no contest or guilty to fraud, theft, or any similar crime regarding a government program, or have been found guilty or had adjudication of guilt withheld for fraud, theft, or any similar crime regarding a government program.
I agree.
Okay, I can live with that, too.
Okay, my next question is now, are we going to put every person's name through every government agency now? How do we manage something like this?
We've already had plans to update our application based on the previous language. So we are currently looking at incorporating a new certification into the application for people who are under pending investigation. That becomes difficult for us to determine whether somebody is pending or not, unless it's somebody that we have actually referred, because typically we're not told by a law enforcement agency that's in an investigation, and they can't tell us any information. As for somebody who's been adjudicated guilty or found guilty, we could probably add to our application process a step for our processing team for them to do a quick run or background check of the person to see if there are any crimes that pop up that fit this definition.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
There's one other thing as well, and I'm not seeking to make Ian's job any more difficult or anyone that works with Ian, but I would take it kind of as a clue or as a hint if law enforcement reached out to subpoena records from you on a particular application. I would take that to suggest they're probably being investigated and they're not taking it for, toilet reading material.
I mean,
Just
the person may know they're investigated, but we may
Yes.
not know, because if you have, in the future, if we get an application of somebody who's committed fraud, I mean, they're already,
You're going to miss some. It's
I was
an
going to say,
imperfect
they're
system.
already like breaking the law, so chances are they're not going to admit that they're under
But
investigation.
I'm thinking in this case, because I understand from Ian that at least on one occasion, law enforcement has reached out to request records. Am I misstating that in any way?
You are not, Commissioner, and actually in that instance, we reached out to law enforcement first.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
that's what started that and triggered that.
Okay, I didn't realize that latter part, but yeah, I mean, obviously, if they don't know, they don't know. I'm not looking to fault staff for doing the impossible.
And as the County Attorney, are you comfortable with this language?
I am. So I have worked with Commissioner Lober, and I've also talked to Commissioner Tabaya on this, and just looking at the language we currently have, I had some concerns with what the directive was from the board prior. So working with this language, I think this is a better compromise and getting closer to the intent of the program and mirroring the federal programs we've seen where they have disqualified individuals because of the pending investigations.
Okay. All right.
Can I make a motion? Commissioner Tabaya?
Yeah, I already made the
I'll second it then.
sorry, which was to strike the initial language and then insert the language that you just discussed and then changed.
And the clerk
Okay.
has that clearly? Okay. All right. Motion by Commissioner Tobias, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Item I3.
All right, short answer is, I think the summary explanation and background provides all the detail. If someone wants more info, I'm happy to read it into the record. But I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the agenda item as written.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and I have a card. Ms. Sullivan.
Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. So I've read the details. I guess it goes to that this arrangement, as I understand it, wasn't a really seemingly good deal for Brevard in the first place. I listened to the RFP meeting, and in that meeting, the director of tourism indicated that convention centers don't make money, and on a downside, economy, TDC is the first to go, and we don't want it on the taxpayer's burden to pay a large debt service. So the concern I have is, my understanding is this deal's kind of gone from bad to worse. It's not a convention center. It's a 20 to 25,000 square foot facility. It's not benefiting the broader tourism economy. It is more serving one developer. And in that case, we're picking winners and choosers, and we're not doing free market. And this is a foreign company or a company that has foreign investors who benefit them by work permits, such. We have local businesses that have been in this business, local people that have been in this business for decades. So it gives me a little bit of heartburn. Further, with a arrangement that seemingly is not a convention center, is a business center benefiting an entity, why are we going down the road and evaluating this? It seems to me, even if you do approve this today, which I would prefer not to see, but is that concurrently it may be an idea to have TDC approach this from the other side of it and look at a convention center, and whether Brevard County even wants a convention center, whether it would benefit us from a tourism standpoint, and take it from the broader picture of where would be the best location for that. If we did decide we want one, would it be out at the port, where you're putting the aquarium, where we have the most number of hotel rooms being built in the northern end of the county? So to do a proper business analysis and take it not from how it's going to, from a developer perspective, but a broader Brevard County perspective. Thank you.
Commissioner Lober?
Just a couple of thoughts. I agree actually with most of what Ms. Sullivan said. The one point where I do differ with her, most particularly regards the ramifications of the tourism sector falling out, if that's to come at some point in the future. I'm not really thrilled with what I believe the current iteration is of the proposal from Driftwood in terms of pledging out of the TDT as a whole, as opposed to what was originally floated by us, which was pledging just the amount of TDT raised at that particular facility. But in either event, I can tell you I have never, ever supported, and I've said openly, I don't support using any of the property tax dollars, any of the millage, to do anything with respect to this project. So if there is anything that comes down the road, and there may or may not be, it's going to involve TDT funding. So if the tourism sector falls out, it's not going to be on the backs of the taxpayers to pay for something, because the pledge that would be there would be tied to some portion of the TDT. And we may not even get there. It may not get to that point. But I do, it's interesting. It's almost like there's some mind reading going on here. I did want to read just into the record so that folks are aware. And I believe, Commissioner, I should say, Madam Chair, you're on the TDC this year, are you not? Commissioner Pritchett, all right, I'm glad I asked. So you'll hear something from Peter pretty soon with respect to this, I believe. But I emailed him, actually not that terribly long ago, a couple days ago, I believe, and I wrote, in anticipation of the upcoming TDC meeting, I'd appreciate if you'd float an idea by the TDC to ascertain interest level. Paragraph, I'd like to know whether the TDC is interested in commissioning a study to determine the best location for a convention center and the ideal size for a convention center. This would be separate and apart from anything related to the Weston Driftwood project, and I contemplate the study occurring concurrently with discussions regarding Driftwood. While I have no qualms spending the developers' funds researching their proposal, the end product is unlikely to answer some fundamental questions I have, which can be addressed more independently through the TDC, and it goes on a little bit. But I'm hoping that'll be brought up. I did get an indication from Peter that he will bring it up, at least to see what the TDC's thoughts are with respect to that. I would appreciate if they do bring something forth, if someone wants to make a motion at that level, if it comes back here, presuming it's anything along the lines of a reasonable cost, I would support it. So just to put that out there.
And it's interesting because where I'm sitting right now, of course, there's a lot of opposition, a lot of things that are for it. But I think the biggest hurdle with this whole project is the misinformation. Talk about misinformation, right? Yeah. I mean, there's been nothing presented to this board. There's been a lot of talk, but I hear a lot of regurgitation of talking points, and it's sort of awful. So what I would recommend this board do, I'm at this point not even prepared to support this, only because, not because I don't support what could potentially come, but again, it's a guess. I would at least suggest that each board member sit down with the Weston folks and get have that conversation. Where are we at? Because I know it's changed from the time that they were in my office the first time. Because the first time they were in my office, I said, absolutely not, there's no way. And I'm not saying I'm toward yes even.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is I don't want them to waste their time or money. But I just find it a little disturbing that they were so intent on getting things done so fast and they weren't going to be able to do anything. But now we're just wasting a ton more time, or we're going to spend a bunch more time going through putting out to RFP a study on the economic and financial impact of a project that they were so urgent and desperate to get done. And my interest isn't to make a bunch of foreign investors a whole bunch of money either. So I don't know that I'll even ever support this, and we're wasting a lot of time in getting people excited and getting people angry about what this commission may or may not do when none of us have said up here that we support this.
Right.
And so I think it's actually kind of hurting us as a board because we look like we're giving away taxpayer dollars, which no one up here has ever agreed to do.
Right.
No one up here has said that they support. So I think, for the public's benefit and for the media circus to stop, I think we need to probably have our own meetings to find out if they need to waste their $65,000 to do a study.
You raise
Because they're going
valid
to
points.
require a supermajority, and I can guarantee that there's one vote up here that's a
Yeah.
definite no.
Would you be more comfortable if I pulled the item?
You could pull it. I mean, if you.
Is that?
I'm not
just-
going to support it today. You may have
I'll
the
pull it.
votes.
I'll pull
You
it
may
for
have the
today.
votes to support it,
That's-
but.
There's no reason to ram anything forward. I think we can take our time on something like this. I understand that the phrase "time is of the essence" has come from certain mouths, but frankly, it's not for me with
Yeah.
respect to this. So
I
I'll
just
go
want
ahead
to
and
see
pull
what
it.
their plan is. I mean, again, I think I'm still pretty far from ever being comfortable with it, but I at least, probably need to hear from them. Because
Yeah,
this
I'm
convention
fine.
center is turning into a big ballroom, and that's kind of funny, too.
Yeah, and that's a big part of the concern that I have. Yeah, I'm happy to withdraw the motion today, and if at some point we have more information and want to revisit it, that's fine. If it comes from me, great. If it comes from you, great. However it comes.
Awesome. Commissioner Pritchett?
Yes, sir. That just turned me off on. Oh, it's the back one. It's your item, sir, so you know what, if you're not supporting it, it's good to withdraw it. As far as another company spending the money to do it, it's their money. It wouldn't matter to me either way. Again, this, even if we pass it or don't pass it, this isn't putting us any kind of legal agreement with doing anything. Our word last time when it came up, we all said no to it because we wanted to make sure this wasn't going to cost taxpayer dollars. As far as if we end up with an amazing convention center in Cocoa Beach, I'd rather it be North Brevard. But I think that could greatly help the county as far as tourist dollars. So I don't know. I haven't even seen the proposal. I don't know. But if they wanted to spend some money to go do due diligence to see if it's even legally able to do, this doesn't in any way, shape, or form set us into having to do anything. So again, if they want to spend it, it's up to them, but if you want to pull it, I'm fine, but if you want to do it, I would support it as well.
I may have 3 too, but the bottom line is down the road, to look at moving things further. I'd rather have more support on doing the due diligence. If we're not sure that we even want to do the due diligence at this point, there's no point in spending anyone's money, even if it's not taxpayer money. So I'm fine withdrawing it, and frankly, at this point, my intention is just to leave it alone until we have something more concrete from them. And if it doesn't come, then we don't see it again.
Mr. Bate?
Thank you, Commissioner. I just wanted to point out that if there isn't any motion to the contrary, since the escrow agreement did expire on December 31st, the remaining funds will need to be returned. So if there's no direction from the board to continue holding it, then that's how we will proceed.
Sounds good.
Okay. Do we need a motion or anything, Abby, to?
If the item's been withdrawn, I mean, at this
Okay.
point, there's
That's
no
it.
action other than the fact that the county will refund the money that was in escrow.
All right. Public comments, Sandra? I had a public comment card, I think I showed it. No, it's here.
Thank you on that last motion, because we don't even have the proposal in hand yet. I attended Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. I attended the Save Lagoon meeting this past Friday, and I have some pretty significant concerns with it that from last year I would ask this commission to consider giving direction to staff So despite scientific literature showing that we have increasing levels of PFOS and glyphosate in the manatees, we're not doing testing as part of the lagoon plan. What we voted for as taxpayers as part of that language said operating capital improvements and capital maintenance projects and programs designed to improve water quality, fish, wildlife, marine habitat, and remove muck and reduce pollution. We can't reduce it if we're not testing for it. Data must drive decisions. The language that, so Florida had the highest number of manatee deaths that we've ever had at 1,101 manatees, with 359 in Brevard County, which is almost one a day. This year, we've had 13 manatees in 14 days in the first days of the year, with 7 manatees this past weekend. FAU Harbor Branch, scientist says we've lost between 60 and 80% of our seagrass in the lagoon. Without seagrass as a foundation species, the lagoon is dying. So many species rely on it. But we're not looking at why that seagrass is dying, and that's missing. So in Section 3 of the Lagoon Plan, it talks about pollutants, and it mentions nutrient loading, but none of the pollutants. So we have PFOS, we have herbicides, we have PS2 herbicides, pesticides, and we have copper. Copper is in over the cleanup target in Grand Canal. Copper is a biocide that kills seagrass. You're looking at dredging Patrick Air Force Base, where the disposal of these chemicals has been to the river. So that very much concerns me and releases. So we're talking about restoring dikes, taking out the dikes of mosquito impoundment areas where there's concerns that has caused releases of pesticides that cause previous brown tide events. Just a few photos. These are some pictures from the weekend. This is my community. This is spraying of herbicides in the ditches. These ditches, the manatees eat, and it goes out to the lagoon. Thank you.
All right, moving on to board reports. Mr. Abate?
No report.
Ms. Jorenby?
No report.
Ms. Pritchett?
No report.
Mr. Tabaya?
No report.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I would just like to reach out to my fellow commissioners, whom I have great respect for all of you. I would like your input for some ideas where my office can advertise and search for qualified candidates for the licensing board. So if you guys can help us out, that would be great.
Yeah, Don's helped me in the past with that.
Okay, good. I appreciate it. In advance, I appreciate it.
All right, and I have no report. I just
Madam
wish
Chair,
everybody.
wait, don't.
Oh, no.
Don't.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't address
We
it,
just
please.
forgot Commissioner Lober. I
That's okay.
apologize.
I know, I'm so small over here. Two things.
Commissioner Tabaya.
I'm very quiet.
I'm just desperate to leave,
Very
I guess.
meek. I know, it's not that bad. It's not noon
No,
yet.
I'm just kidding.
Come on now. For reasons that are in large part different than those of Ms. Sullivan's, I do have some concerns over the Sorrel plan. I just want to put that out there. I think, in short, there's certain aspects of it that are immensely overcomplicated, and I don't know that they need to be. And I'll tell you, it's great to have experts, and there are things for which experts are needed, but there are also things that are just evident and obvious to someone that's a layperson. For instance, I don't need the medical examiner to come out if someone's decapitated to say, hey, in my expert medical opinion, I believe that individual has expired. It's pretty obvious. Head's not on the torso, pool of blood around them. They're no longer among the living.
Wait a minute, what if they had COVID?
If they had COVID. Well, that may change the dynamic. But with that said, only other thing to counteract the negative, I'll leave a positive here. I do want to give props to Alex at the county attorney's office. He has his stuff together. I think in some years, when Abby is looking to retire maybe, or if there's another spot that's comparable in an adjacent county or one of the municipalities, I could see him moving up rather easily. The guy has an amazing brain between his ears. I don't want to inflate his ego too much, so I'll shut up with that.
Commissioner Tobias, trying to bypass everybody. No report. Okay, and I have no report, so meeting adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.